Hey, welcome to another live stream. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Hello, Frederico, Rahul, Brian, Becca, Hannah, joining all over the world. Thanks. I really love it. Kieran, everyone else. I'm not going to be able to say everyone's names, but keep saying hi in the chat. I can see it, which is great. Welcome to another live stream. Appreciate it. I always like just seeing where everyone's joining from. I think it's just cool too for everyone to kind of connect and see, anyways. Another live stream. We're going to talk about platform product management. This one is a little bit by popular demand, so some of you might be joining because of it. The other week, I wrote a newsletter post about platform product management. Basically, was like why I think platform product management is one of the most demanding roles out there. I kind of illustrated six or half a dozen. I think it was six. I wrote the post that I never remember anymore, but half a dozen reasons why I believe it's one of the most demanding roles out there. And I got a lot of responses about wanting to go deeper into it. I did a video on it as well, and I mentioned that we could go deeper into it. I could have done a course on this, but I thought, stuff it. Let's just do a live stream. Let's just make it free. And to be honest, I'm rethinking all my courses anyways. The product mentorship's my flagship kind of product, and working with clients and companies are. So, anyways, sidebar. But we thought we'll do it. We'll basically make this a bit of a long one, and it'll be a masterclass into platform product management. As someone who's done platform product management, I'm even doing it right now in a fractional role for a client. We're doing AI platforms. We're building like AI capabilities and some, AI products as well, some internal products. So if you're interested in working or interested in picking my brains about AI, let me know. We could do another live stream on all those lessons too. So drop a comment, let me know about that as well. But I want to go through everything basically that I've learned around adapting product management to platforms. So we're going to cover discovery for platform products. We're going to do OKR strategy, stakeholder management, how to do go-to-market or release activities, because it's like kind of like go-to-market internally. What does that look like? And all of it. So I got a bit of a run sheet in front of me, but one of the best parts about doing this live, and another reason why I thought about doing it live, is that you can ask questions. So if I don't cover anything to a sufficient level of depth to your liking, hit me up, ask a question, let me know. I can reiterate it. We can go deeper. If I don't cover a topic that you would like me to cover, drop a question as well in the chat. I've got the chat kind of in front of me, but I also got like another screen here, so I kind of look between the two. But let me know around that. On that point, I'm just going to get straight into it. There's a little bit of a delay sometimes, so I'm hoping you can all hear me. Somebody would have said so if you can't so far. And awesome. Netherlands, UK. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everyone. So let's get into it. I want to start here, and some of this might be a little bit of a recap if you've seen the video, if you've read my post about it, but I think this is foundational and it's worth starting here. And it's also just a really good starting place to segue into adapting discovery and stuff for platform products. So one of the core challenges or shifts that happens when you have a platform is you become one step removed away from end users. So B2C in particular products, B2B is a little bit different dynamic. You have a product, it directly goes to your users. Your users are also your customers. Seeing as this is going to be a deeper dive of masterclass, I'm going to go deeper into some concepts here because I'm going to treat this like a training course type thing. Think of this as like a free course. So what happens here is there is a core concept that happens here, which is known as value exchange, right? So a product provides value to customers. Customers then give us something back, and this is really the difference between users and customers. Customers being the people who give you that value exchange in return, generally through dollars, but it can be other things. There's the saying, which is, if you're not paying for a product, if a product's free, you're the product, right? So they're getting something from you as part of it, but there's some type of value exchange going on here. Product provides value, you get value in return. Now, platforms become a little bit more difficult because you sit over here, right? So as a platform, you sit once removed. The value exchange loop is still happening, but it is a longer chain. So what you're building, what I'm trying to say here is that what you're building ultimately helps this team provide value to the end users, and they give value in return. And then they also, but the difference here is often, unless you're a commercial platform like your Stripe or something like that, you're generally not selling it. You've got internal teams using it. which means that there's not necessarily too much of an exchange here. The exchange there is that as a company, it's not really an exchange to you. The exchange is that as a company, as an organization, we get some type of efficiencies gains by having platforms. This is also one of the reasons why you don't see platforms in really small startups. Like if you're a really small startup and you're like, hey, we need to build this platform and you're 10 people, it just doesn't make any sense. You're going to invest into something that is, there's a saying, I like the saying, which is to don't solve problems that don't exist yet. You're essentially trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist yet. The company might not even exist when you're at, like, you don't even know if you're going to get to the scale to make a platform worthwhile. But anyways, the point here being is that one of the core challenges you have is that you're once removed from end users. Now, the mistake, I'll do this in red, the mistake that a lot of teams make, I made this mistake initially. Honestly, I made this mistake and then it didn't feel right to me. And then I kind of was trying to work out what actually makes sense. But a lot of mistakes that I see with the teams I work with, PMs that I coach, is they basically stop here. They treat those internal product teams, because there's a team here, right? So there's some type of internal product team that is building products for customers and you're enabling them to do something. They stop there. They go, these people are our users. And then they try to just apply the product craft. Basically, they try to do, this is going to get really messy, but they try to do what they would have done on a B2C product, but then just apply it here. And I didn't mean to draw a Venn diagram. It wouldn't be a product talk if we didn't draw a Venn diagram. So there's your first Venn diagram for this, for the next hour or so. But they try to do that and it doesn't work because you can't just treat these users that way because you're serving multiple platforms there. So what you actually want to do is you need to understand this team. So you do need to understand them and you need to adapt. And I'll get deeper into this. You do need to adapt what you're doing there because you're trying to understand their perspective from like engineering and stuff, right? It depends on how they use your platform, but a lot of the times it's actually connecting to it. So you need to understand it from that perspective. And by the way, this is something that we're having to tackle and having conversations with, I'm having to tackle it right now, real time for a client, but like I'm having conversations with other product leaders and product managers about it. There is a new user inside this as well, which is AI, right? So AI is doing more coding. So you need to think about that. But then you also need to understand these end users because what you want to do is you want to understand what your platform enables from an end user outcome. And this is fundamental. Hence why I'm starting here. You'll see this play out in not everything, but most things we're going to end up talking about. You'll see this foundation play out. And if you don't have this foundation, you'll see how doing a lot of the other things we're going to talk about is going to be quite difficult. And if you do have this, it's going to be a lot easier. Okay, so let's get deeper into discovery. So another reason why you want to do this is because your platform, to draw this another way, oh, that is a terrible T. T, can't even talk. P. What happened there? Platform. And then because I was saying P, I drew a P. So your platform is usually going to service multiple products within the organization. Again, this is the reason why you don't see it in small startups unless you're a platform startup company. And by the way, if you're a platform company, I should just say this. These people have end users, and what ends up happening is actually becomes more difficult because you service generally multiple different industries, that type of stuff. So the users here could be like accountants, and then these people could be like tech bros or something like that, So it actually makes it even more disparate than within a company. Within a company is actually a little bit easier because your end users are usually, close to each other's around that. Question on YouTube around, can you please clarify B2B and B2C in context of platforms? Yes, well, let's touch on that. We'll touch on that in a second as we kind of go through this. But what I was just going to say here is like, everything I'm going to talk about, if you're a platform company, everything we're going to talk about is still the same. The only difference is you'll have this kind of like line here where these people, these yellow people, are your customers, their customers, if that makes sense. This is where you end up in what is known as B to B to C world. C world. So what that means is you're selling to another business. Whoops. You're selling to another business, hence the B2B, and that business is selling to customers. But you still need to understand what what they're selling to their end customers and how your platform enables that. Because if you can't do that, you can't also sell to these people very well. But you also can't just build an effective platform. Like you gotta know how to do that. Here's some simple examples around that. I would say that Stripe understands the payments world and what customers are trying to do in terms of payments and what payments options. They probably know how many people use Apple Pay over credit cards over something else better than you do, better than probably most banks do, to be honest. And that's because they've understood these people really, really well. Shopify understands e-commerce better than most of their customers, right? And that's kind of their play, and that's kind of the point. They're saying we'll give you an e-commerce platform, so you don't need to worry about that. We'll be the experts, and we'll help you do that. So you do need to understand this. But what I'm getting at is what ends up happening in this world when it comes to discovery is you end up having two layers of discovery that you need to do. You need to do discovery on these teams. So you need to understand how they're going to use your platform. What jobs do they have to do? So if you just go jobs to be done, being jobs to be done framework. I'm not going to really go deep into that framework, but awesome framework. Go look it up too if you want to learn more about it. But you need to understand their jobs. Like what jobs are they hiring your platform to do on their behalf, right? So what do you service for them? What jobs are underserved? What jobs are still current pain points for them that you can solve, that sit within your remit without bloating the platform that it becomes this Frankenstein thing, right? But at the same time, you also need to understand what jobs to be done their customers that they're solving for their customers. And you want to do this too. So you got two layers of discovery, because what you're actually looking for is you're looking for consistent patterns and pain points. So when you look across, let's just say there's three product lines in your company. We'll just keep this simple. When you look across those three product lines and their customers and what they're doing, and this is ultimately all your customers as a company, what are some of the commonalities, right? What are some of the common threads, common pain points? And what you're looking to do is kind of stitch them together and say, I think we could build something to help enable these people to solve that, is what you're doing. But then you also need to understand this layer, because that then also shapes the design of it, right? And the solution of it. Like, how do we build this in a way that it's really easy for those teams to use and to build off? Like, what technology are they using? What, is it an API? Is it not? Like a good example here too, just with the AI side of the fence, obviously Anthropic created a new protocol called MCP, Model Context Protocol. I don't remember. I think it's Context Protocol. But essentially it's kind of like APIs for agents is how I think about it in a very just simple sense. But that's even a consideration, right? Like, does that make sense? Does that not make sense? How are they using it? So you need to understand each of these layers. So the first change that happens with discovery is discovery obviously gets a lot harder. You have to start to cover all of those end users. You have to cover the internal platforms and products as well. Now, to just answer question on YouTube about clarifying B2B and B2C in context of platforms. So when I think about platforms, there's a few different things here. So one of them is I'm a platform within a company. So all of this is the one company. Now that company could be a B2B company. It could be a B2C company. So in this sense, this would be something like, take any big successful B2C product that you use, TikTok, Facebook, etc., YouTube even. They would have platforms because they're at that scale. They would absolutely have platform teams. So in their company, they have customer facing. So this is how I think about it too. They would have customer facing, or customer serving is another way to think about this. Can't write today. Customer serving products, right? They are things like, if you're watching on YouTube, this would be like the YouTube interface, the chat, all of those, things within it that you're using today. Now, that's a B2C, right? Because then you're just a customer and you're using it. Then, so the platform in this sense would be doing something to enable those customer facing and customer serving teams. Now, if you're a B2B company, it's the same, just the only difference is the end customer is not an everyday person, it's another business. And sometimes that business then would those businesses would serve their own customers as well. But you might not need to worry about those people because really what they do doesn't matter to you. You're not in that B2B to C chain that I mentioned before. Right. So that's how I think about it. Then you've got what I described before, which is basically you're a platform that sells to. There are very few platforms that sell to customers. I'm not actually sure if there actually is. Um, I actually, if somebody can think of one, I was trying to think of one. Somebody can think of one, let me know. But basically most platforms sell to B2B because that's the case to another business. So then if you're in that chain, you're a platform and your product is a platform. You literally sell a platform to other companies that then sell to customers. And in that chain, you need to understand those customers. So hopefully that answers the question, but that's how I think about it. Visa, Federico, Visa, yes, but also no, because you get Visa cards. So, but let's draw that out actually, because Rahul just asked a question about, and StreamYard asked a question about what's an example of a B platform for B2C companies. Would it be internal development platform? So an internal developer platform or internal developer experience would be an internal platform, absolutely. But let's use Visa as an example because Visa is actually quite a good example to illustrate all this. Why can't I zoom? Okay, so Visa. Visa has technically multiple products. So one of their products is a card. So you get issued a card that can be B2B because obviously you can they are a card issuer. So they would issue the cards to a business, to a bank, and the bank would then give it to you. But ultimately you would say that that's a B2. I mean, you could argue it, but I would probably say it's a B2C thing. The card sits on top of a whole heap of infrastructure, right? And that infrastructure is what enables payments to work. Inside that infrastructure, there would be a bunch of platforms that would be enabling stuff. I'll give a simple example would be like fraud, right? Fraud. So things that are checking for fraud, checking for balances, right? Being able to check whether there's balances, being able to do security, those types of things. They would all be platforms that would be part of that infrastructure layer that enables payments to happen. Now, the reason why I also say it's not completely a B2C platform play is Visa also sells to businesses, not just to banks in terms of issuing, they are a payment infrastructure as well. So they are technically selling to other businesses as a payment infrastructure. So if I'm a cafe owner, and serving coffees. Yeah. Okay, cool. I would have a points of sale machine. Maybe it's Square, right? Most people know that. Very big global company. Those people would be using people like Visa's payment infrastructure to handle international payments. That would then go down to the platform layer. But they would have actually that platform would sell to Square. Square is then a B2B company. Yeah, okay, we're tracking. B2B company that sells to customers, to B2C customers, sell to B2B here to sell to banks as issuers, but also B2C in the sense that they also issue cards to customers, but they don't issue stuff directly to us. So I guess the argument would be that they're not B2C in the sense that you don't get a card from Visa. You are definitely a user. So there's B2C elements there, but their platform providing the infrastructure. So that is a hell of a mess because Visa is a very big company and they do a lot, but hopefully that also illustrates B2B versus B2C and how platforms fit within the whole thing. Netflix, Kindle. Yeah. The thing with, Netflix produce their own things. Kindle could be one, but Kindle is a product. The thing with Kindle, so Kindle fits this well too. So Amazon has the Kindle. Kindle is their B2C product that sell, but Kindle has a platform infrastructure. So you could own a platform. And to be honest, this would break down into multiple because how big it is. But let's use like publishing books as an example, right? So there will be platform infrastructure that enables some front end to allow publishing to happen. For them to publish their books. So then like writers and publishers would be able to use this basically interface, which would be to B2B here, but there will be a platform that sits underneath it. So to tie all of this together back to what we're talking about, if I own this platform, I need to understand, let me use the highlighter. I need to understand this person. I need to understand this team. I need to understand this team, and I need to understand this person. So can you see how this gets really complicated very quickly, right? So that's how I think about it. And then when you're thinking about discovery, you need to map this out. So it's really important to map this out. I'll give you a technique right now to map this out, and let's try and use the picture that I just did here to map it out. You can draw concentric circles, and essentially in the concentric circles, I'm going to have to move one of them. Basically, in the concentric circles, you're basically doing a further remove away from you as a product. So your platform is the core product. So this is a real technique. Use this. I use this technique. So you put yourself in the center, right? Like, what is the core? That's you. Let me move this because this is the only thing that needed to change. You then would map out, well, within Amazon, the internal teams that use my platform are these teams. There's a team that owns Kindle, the Kindle product. There's a team that does publishing, blah, blah, blah. Then you map out who do they serve? So then you're like, okay, end users who are like readers, people like my wife. I don't use the Kindle, but my wife would be one of them. But then you also map out like, okay, writers, publishers, that side of the fence. Once you have this chain and you've got this picture, you can now start to think about where am I focused and how do I map the opportunity space, right? Like, how do I do discovery in this world? And this is how you would do it. So if I'm like, okay, what's the biggest pain points? Should I be focusing over here from a strategy perspective, or should I be focusing here? I'm going to get into the challenges that this creates around stakeholder management and trade-offs and different opinions and prioritization. We'll get in there. So we're heading there. But I just want to round out discovery. So you want to map all this out, and then you need to do discovery on all of this, right? Now, does that mean some nuances? Does that mean you need to understand these end users as well as these internal teams? No. But you need to understand them enough that you can piece all of this together. And you can look for those, what are those? You can connect the dots and you can look for overlaps, right? So you probably want to speak to multiple writers and publishers so I can understand what their jobs to be done are and their needs. And here is one of my tips here. If this team is already doing discovery and user research and interviews with those people, then piggyback off it. Sometimes if you can build a good enough relationship, you can go with them and you can add some of your questions into that discovery. So you can do that, which is great. The other thing you can do is they're going to have a bunch of rich insights. So sometimes you can spend less time actually talking to these people up here because you can just leverage this team's insights. So you can basically take they got some type of repository they can share, but I would be wanting to build really strong relationships with these people and build strong relationships so I can do that, basically, right? So hopefully that helps and that makes sense. But it does make this really, really hard. And this is why I said in the newsletter post, and I'm going to say it several times today, this is really a senior product manager role. You can't give a junior, I can't give an associate product manager this. This is really, really hard. Tell you what's not hard. Where did we draw the B2C thing? Up here, right? Make it cleaner. One product, one user, one set of value exchange. That's a PM, sure. Mid-level PM, sure. Senior PMs for really complex versions of this, or really important versions, like stuff that's like our core product or strategic or it's 0 to 1 or some type of nuance around that? Sure. But do I put a junior person on all of this? No. Like this is hard. This requires a lot of skill. This requires them building a lot of relationships with a lot of different people. So yeah. Question on YouTube's front. Are there concrete differences between platform and product? So this is how I think about the differences between that. So this is a good question just to like clarify for everyone. I kind of alluded to it up here, but let me just let me go back here and let me actually just confirm it. The way I think about it is you have customer. When I say customer, I'm really talking about that end customer. Like you're at the end of the chain type thing. You have customer serving or customer facing products, and then you have basically what I think of it as enabling. And you can think of this as like customer enabling too. So Laura asked a question about needing to jump. This is recorded. So the recording will be shared. It's also will be up on YouTube as well. But if you've registered, which you have, you'll get the recording. So thumbs up on that one. Sorry, I know you're jumping in a few minutes, so I wanted to just answer it. So the way I think about it is like the difference is one is facing, the other one is enabling around that. So what does this start to look like from a concrete point of view? How does this differ? Well, this one up here usually has some type of user interface. It has some type of way for people to interact. Now, that's not to say platforms can't have a user interface. They can, but it's usually the end product that gives those end users that value, right? So it gives them value, and then they pay back, right? So if some of the examples people have thrown around, right? Like Netflix, right? Netflix has a UI. There is an app, right? You got a Netflix app. You got a Netflix app on the TV, that type of stuff. You also have Netflix, like the production would be, and built-in TV shows would be a form of product. The product would connect into the app. But like you build shows, people watch shows. That is the value exchange. I open the app, I watch a show, I give value back. That's like a product perspective. Now, platforms is something that enables that to happen. That's why I think about it as enabling. Often this means there isn't a user interface. Often it means it's like APIs or it's something that connects into it, some type of service that they get out of it. So it's usually less about those things. There is obviously overlaps because it can have a UI and stuff. The way I think about it is it's usually once removed from the end customer. So one is again facing, so direct. That's really my litmus test for it. And one is indirect. It serves a team that serves customers. That's really the main difference between it. And a platform as well. So one other thing here is a platform would normally serve multiple of them. If you have a platform just serving one, I mean, technically you can have it, but usually you don't see that because there's just no point. So another concrete difference between them is a platform is usually something that is more horizontal across an organization and it serves multiple different teams, multiple different products. So if you think about it from that perspective, it will be something that serves multiple different products. The platform in Netflix would serve the mobile app. It would serve the tablet app. It would serve the desktop app. It would serve, it would serve multiple different products. So that's another concrete difference, if that helps around that. But you should absolutely be thinking about it as a product. So that's on the discovery side. Around that, I'm trying to look at my notes to see if I want to touch on anything else on this one. Some other tips inside here, this too. So since these people, if you are a platform where this is an internal thing, these people are usually internal in your company. There are some advantages to that. There are also some disadvantages, but here's some advantages that you can do here. Since these people are internal, you can do things like set up, let me just write them down as we go through them. So you can do things like set up like a Slack channel or Teams, whatever you use. You can set up a channel with them. And what I like to do is I like to find like those forward thinking people, like the people who always give me good feedback, who are happy to give feedback, who don't begrudgingly give it, the people who are super engaged. and try and find those people. And sometimes you need to work out who the key people are. Sometimes it's a mixed bag. It's like the product managers it could be some product managers, could be some designers, it could be some engineers. Generally, there's a lot of engineers. You could have some tech leads, that side of the fence. I coached a director of product who started at a company that is a product that probably all of you would actually use, but he was owning some of the developer experience stuff. So absolutely a platform. And what he got was basically a group of engineering managers who would be like the champions for it. And he set up a Slack channel and he put those people in there. There was less than 10. There was a couple of them, but like a couple of engineering managers, and put them into that channel. And this is a great way to just have that direct line to them all the time. So you can absolutely set up those types of things. Very easy to get a hold of them. I already mentioned trying to go with them on discovery and interviews, and also trying to leverage their insights. So go and do that. The more you do this as well, I would just say one other thing to happen here is like when you cut it off up here, when you cut it off and you treat these people as your only users, you end up in order taker mode, right? You end up basically having to wait for them to tell you what to do. And what you can't do is you can't anticipate their needs. You can't stitch things across. And this is where it gets really challenging, actually. And a lot of platforms start to fail and they start to not get very good because all they've done is waited. So like, I'll draw it down here. They've kind of waited for an order to come. That order's come. They've built it. But there's no strategy there. It's not strategic. There's not like, oh, there are a few consistent needs across all of these. Let me talk to these people. Oh, these people have the same. Let me now try and stitch all of this together and come up with a really good solution that is going to serve them in the best possible way. It's very hard to do that. And you kind of have to rely on the fact that they've done their discovery, and you don't know if like they're just asking you to do something because they need it, but nobody else needs it. So you don't actually know if you're going to build something that actually is reusable and actually should belong in the platform. So you kind of like miss out on that strategy piece of the puzzle, right? And I know this is hard because some organizations don't think like this, and then you very much end up being like more order taker, but you kind of want to start to break yourself out of it is where you want to get to. And we can talk more about that too. Cool. There are some questions which want to look at. How do you measure value delivered? We're going to get to that. So we'll touch that in a second. Have you worked on internal products for most? Have worked on, it's easier to access user, get feedback. Yes. Yeah. Cool. So let's get into some of the stakeholder management side, and then I want to get into the measurement side afterwards. So all of this means that you end up with a lot of stakeholders because all of those different teams have their own set of stakeholders, and we kind of sketched it out. Actually, let's go back to this one with like Visa and stuff, right? Like and this below. All of these would have different sets of stakeholders. You've got a public like this department, there'll be different departments, right? Have their own set of stakeholders. You have your own set of stakeholders as well. There's other stakeholders. You end up with this really big web of stakeholders. Another reason why this is worth mapping out is you can use the same technique. I've done a video on this before on YouTube. You can definitely find it. If you go to Product Pathways YouTube, just look up stakeholder mapping. You'll find this stakeholder mapping technique. But it's a very similar stakeholder mapping technique, which is worth doing. I'll save the time. You can watch the video. I won't go deep into it now. But you do a very similar thing where you draw these circles and you map out your stakeholders. You need to do that type of stuff. Like when you start having all these stakeholders, you have to be much more intentional about how you go about stakeholder management. And I talk about in that video, I talk about a technique where you can take that and it can start to help you think about how do I engage with my stakeholders. So worth going and watching. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But you basically end up with a very large web of stakeholders. This means that you need to get very good at communicating with them and connecting with them. Another reason why I see this as a senior role. So in the video, I'm going to draw something. I'm just going to give you the main thing and you can watch the rest of the video another time if you want. In the video, I talk about how you can dissect your stakeholder map. So there's like 3 kind of sections. These people are like your core or key stakeholders. You've got like your direct stakeholders who are people direct. direct, and these are people who you want to keep, basically you want to collaborate with, collab. And then you've got like indirect, who are people you want to keep informed. Now, this can break down into, you can think of this as a 2x2 matrix where you have like frequency on one axis, and then you have what I refer to as like, I think of it as touch, and I borrowed this from like the service industry where you have like high touch and low touch. So high touch down here, and this is high frequency, and then low frequency, and then low touch up there. When you map all your stakeholders, you can then start to think of them in like these buckets. And when you think about these frequencies, you can start to think about, well, how do I manage them in the best possible way? High touch is like a one-on-one. You want to super tailor your communication to them. And then low touch is like, I'm going to send you an email type thing, right? So when you map this, this can help you build a stakeholder engagement framework. And you have to do this because you have so many stakeholders. It's not enough to have, and because you've got a wide range of stakeholders, sometimes it's not enough to just have like one stakeholder monthly forum, right? You often can get away with that with like more simpler products where you can have just like this monthly update or something like that. But when you got this wide group, it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to do that effectively. So the way I do it, I use this is it gets me thinking about how should I engage with them. Anyone in core, I'm going to set up one-on-ones. I'm going to make those one-on-ones at a high frequency, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, depends on your organization. The people in here are people I'm going to have regular workshops with, the people I'm going to pull into discovery. These people are also people that, especially from a direct point of view, you can think of that as like they're generally the people who are using your product and all their key stakeholders. These people, I might set up like, there might be a group here and a group here, and I might set up like 2 regular stand-in kind of forums where we actually go through stuff together, right? And then the people out in this last section, I just put them on some type of comms. Now, that's also because it's low touch. Now, the comms is usually something like I've often do week notes, but week notes usually will go to these 2 groups. But you might do like a monthly, I like doing newsletters, or some type of monthly email update or like Slack message update or something like that. But I want to keep them inside some type of regular cadence that they just get regular comms from me. Now, the reason why I push that towards something more asynchronous, like those types of methods, is because when you have a lot of stakeholders, you can easily, especially as a platform product manager, you can easily end up just having a whole calendar full of meetings. And some of you might already be there. You've just full of one-on-ones with stakeholders and all these stakeholder forums that you have to go to and all these meetings, and it's a nightmare. So actually mapping this out and actually working out, okay, what groups are there? Are there logical groups? Okay, can I include those 2 groups together maybe, and I have that. So then now I only have 2 or 3 like regular forums, and then I can push a lot of other stuff to be asynchronous, and then maybe I get everyone together once a quarter. Or twice a quarter type thing. And again, this just I always find this very valuable with the platform PMs that I coached. I feel like they're in meetings all the time and they're really struggling with this. We normally map this out. And what we tend to find is that they have just too many meetings with everyone, and we can consolidate and we can just kind of think about this a lot smarter. So you've got to be really intentional about this. That's a really good technique. You can go check out the video. Absolute big fan of doing that. The other thing that happens, as you know, I was alluding to, is these 2 would have different needs, right? So if we've got like these 2 business units asking me for stuff, they might have different demands. Now, this is another reason why you want to understand those end users as much as possible, because that's going to help you triage a little bit. But one of the other ways that I tackle this is if you can get yourself into a position where you're being less of an order taker. So this is like, a lot of this is like, how do you get yourself out of being an order taker? What I want to do, so let's say that I've got those 2 stakeholders. Stakeholders requesting A, and stakeholder over here is requesting B. What I actually want to do, if platform's here, right, and I'm here, I don't want to be in this like horse trading between A versus B and hey, take a number type thing. I don't want to be in Q world or to take a world. So first step is, can I understand what their end users are trying to do? And let's think about this a bit more strategically, a bit more bigger picture, right? Maybe one of their users is more impactful and more bang for buck for the company overall than the others. Okay, that might be something that feeds into prioritization. That means that we might pick one of them over the other. But the other thing I want to do is if I can piece this picture together, like what their needs are, what the end users' needs are, if I can try to be more strategic, what I can do is actually have goals and I can try and have OKRs. And this is going to be the segue into that, right? And what I actually want to do is say, well, here are our OKRs. Which ones align to which, right? So, like, how do they align? And what I want to do is shift the conversation away from we need to do B, and I want them to agree on our goals. Like, do you agree that the platform should be focused on this, right? And even better, if you have your own boss over here that can help you mediate with that as well. Because if you can get them to agree on the strategic direction of the platform, then you've got an avenue to also push back, right? To say, well, the platform is this, we're heading in this direction. So like we're going to do A, not B, because it fits within the direction that we're going, right? So there's a few things to unpack into that. One of them is that you need to absolutely be more strategic and have goals that are not inherent in goals from other people, but for you to set goals for where you want to take the platform and have a strategy for the platform. Again, this is harder than a B2C type product to have a strategy around it because it's like, well, what's the strategy around the platform? Let me piece together a strategy that I'm kind of putting together right now and a vision around this to illustrate this, right? I'm going to have to like generalize some things because like, kind of somewhat talking about work that I'm doing right now. So imagine a platform that can enable anyone in the company. We actually have a segment, right? So anyone that fits a specific profile in a company, you could think of it like anyone in a certain type of role. It's not a role because it's more of a capability, but fits a certain type of profile, has a certain type of need that they can use this platform. Now, I want to take this even further because AI can kind of enable this. It's not just, hey, they can use this platform. I want this platform to be able to walk them through what their problem is, what is actually happening. And I want it to be able to produce unique code for them because AI can code for you, right? So this isn't like we need to build a platform. This is a very kind of experimental in a way. We'll see if I can pull this off. But like, we don't want to build like in the past pre-AI. So pre-AI. So ignoring if we didn't have AI, you would have had to go and work out all these use cases, right? So what are all these scenarios? And then I want to build all of those scenarios into the platform and build it in a way that's configurable, right? So people can kind of pull the building blocks together and connect stuff. Think about stuff like Zapier, right? It's like Zapier is a good example of that. So Zapier Zapier sells to businesses, not everyday customers. Although everyday people could use Zapier to do automations for themselves. So I guess that could probably be a B2C platform, although probably predominantly B2B. But you kind of need to build all of this stuff in, and then you kind of have the building blocks. The thinking here and the strategy here is like, I don't actually want to produce any of that because why can't I produce it in a way that we have layers, right? There is a layer that they can't touch. There's a layer that we own as a team. But I can have an abstraction and I can have a layer on top that can be unique code built by AI for them. And I can save the energy. We don't need to build all of this stuff. We can actually get to market internally much faster around that. So this is an example of a strategy around that platform. So if it doesn't fit, if they're asking us to do, so people are asking us to do stuff right now. And the answer is no, because we're working out how to build this whole this thing and try and make it a reality, right? Don't know how much it's going to be a reality, but like we're trying to piece this together because we don't want to build that. We want to build the infrastructure and the platform that will walk you through building it yourself. You won't really realize that you're building it yourself. AI will kind of be doing it, but AI is going to facilitate you through that, around that. So that's like a platform strategy that you want to have in a direction that if you can get people aligned on it, and then you also can sell it too. So like part of it too is like you going to them and having those conversations and being like, this is the direction we're going in. This is the vision that we have, the product vision, right? It's all this product craft stuff. Product vision, here's the strategy, here's our goals towards it. You'll get your problem solved, but it's not today. It's going to be later. So that's that piece of the puzzle around that. And then I want to facilitate the kind of the conversation towards that. I swear I had something else I wanted to say on this. I'll look at my notes, but I'm also looking at comments or questions. So Rahul asked the question, basically, is OKRs is not a platform SLA? No, it's not. So your OKR should not be, it's not an SLA, right? This is sidebar, but useful because it's worth touching because the question came up. I think of this is not a perfect definition, but I think of this is how I think of the difference between OKRs and KPIs, right? So OKRs versus KPIs. So a KPI to me, how I think about it is like health, right? And to use an analogy, if you're flying a plane, you've got like this big dashboard in front of you. It's got all these different dials. You're not focused on moving all those dials at any given time, right? The dials are there so you can just track wind speed, altitude, blah. The dials are also there and the alerting is also there. So if something happens, like air pressure changes or something like that, you know about it. That is health. The air pressure should be blah. The air pressure is no longer that. That's a problem. Okay, I can see that. SLAs sit on this side of the fence, right? So this would be like, these are your service level agreements is what SLA stands for. So you would have KPIs for a platform. I have SLAs, SLOs, etc. that I would have to, and it's basically the agreement and the service that you're going to provide to your customers, right? The people using your platform. They are KPIs. You need to monitor them. You need to make sure that they're good. OKRs, on the other hand, is not health. It is the thing you want to move. So it should be your goal. For example, if we go back to the plane analogy, if you are going into land, your goal is no longer to maintain a certain altitude. It's to descend, and to descend at a specific rate because you're trying to make it to the runway at a certain altitude by the runway. That would be your O and your KR. So O would be like land the plane, and your key results would be, descending at X amount of wind speed, blah, 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 right? But your OKR should be a goal and the things that you want to change. So when I say goals here, it's exactly that, right? Your OKR should be like, what are the things that we're changing? That should come from your strategy. So, you can go check that. So it should come from your strategy. I have a self-paced course on product strategy. I just ran the last live cohort for the year. So there's not going to be any more live cohorts on strategy side of the fence. But if you're interested in getting something more live around that, I can do a live stream, but I've got some videos. You could also join the product mentorship around that. I also have a self-paced course on stakeholder management as well over on Product Pathway. So if you do want to get even deeper in some of that stakeholder management stuff, it's actually, you can go check some of that out. But so you need to deal with some of those competing priorities. And one of the ways you do that is by having that strategy, having that vision. Part of that also means you are very clear on what it is not and what it is, right? I think that's a really cool thing in strategy. So in the course, and I've talked about this before, I did a live stream. I think the last live stream was actually, we talked about product strategy. It's been a month since we did a live stream. I had a bit of a break, but I showed some examples where they have like a not list, right? Like, what are we not doing, right? What are we not? Those things are really important. And that's also another thing that you do here in order to try and get yourself out of that order taker. If you're stuck in the order taker and you can't get out of this, then you are very much stuck with like trying to stack rank things, trying to rank things against some type of prioritization matrix or something like that. But the way you get out of it is that you have to start to have a strategy. You need to have a vision. You need to get people to agree on it and align on it. In the strategy cohort that I just wrapped up, The last session that we had was about communication, storytelling, getting people to buy into your strategy. And I always frame that as the most important session, because you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you can't get people to buy into it, can't get people to like agree, then it means nothing. Which I want to talk a bit about that in a minute around like storytelling and stuff around that. But I just wanted to also touch on some other questions. How do you, so question around how do you suggest structuring a platform product management team when there are like 10 products and the platform serves big org product company? So this one, I might park this question. We'll come to it towards the end with the Q&A. So we'll get back to that one, actually. How should I decide? So another one. How should I decide what to build first when building a platform agentic layer for internal teams? Can you give me a little bit more clarity around like maybe an example of what you mean? Like decide what to build first when building a platform. Yeah, let me know. Like give me a little bit more context and I'll happy to answer it based on my experience. In multi-sided platform models where only one tier pays. Yeah, Rahul, good question. So Rahul is asking basically like in a multi-sided platform. So going back to the example we just had, let's say one pays the bills, right? One's the money maker, and the other one is not the money maker per se. How do you recommend structuring the strategy so outcomes aren't just weighed towards the person who pays? Because that's definitely something that can happen. To me, a lot of it's about strategy and you getting the inputs and data around that. So let me give you some tangible examples around this. So one of the platforms that I've worked on before, basically there was stuff that we needed to do, and this happens a lot with platform, right? So like there is usually foundational layer stuff. So let me go back to here. If you had to, like, let's say let's just break this whole thing up. There's like some foundational layer stuff. There's like this stuff for that team. There's this, there's that, right? Okay. So just some building blocks. Often the foundational thing is the thing that's going to give you the least money. Maybe it's zero, right? Maybe it's $0. But it's the thing that holds everything together. And then there's like this thing that's like, we can make heaps of money, but that thing we can't do until we do this thing. And et cetera, right? So I don't know, I'll put some massive dollar figures on all of this. What you need to do is you need to start to have a picture of all this. And this is, again, why that discovery is so useful. The dollar figure stuff, and it's not just the dollar figure, it's also like, I always just think about impact, right? And impact can be sometimes monetary, but it can be other things. So it depends also on your company strategy. So you need to piece multiple things together. So you need your company strategy. I refer to this as getting inputs when you build your strategy. You need the other product line strategies. You need potentially the other departments, and they're all inputs that come in. Those things are things that you can overlay over these pieces, right? Some of these pieces are going to fit more strategically. Like maybe this is a really big strategic fit as a company. So then when it comes to actually trying to set goals and to actually prioritize, you need to have, and I refer to this inside strategy as narratives. You need to have a narrative and you need to have a story to tell around all of this, right? So you need to be able to piece all of this together to say, I totally understand. Like, I'm not an idiot. This is not going to give us any ROI, right? There's none. There's no ROI in delivering this first piece. But if we don't do this first piece, nothing matters. Nothing matters, right? And this is how I communicate it, right? Nothing matters. So if you want these types of outcomes from those products to their customers, then we need to have this first. So that's what we're going to do first. And then this is where your strategy turns into roadmaps. And then that's like strategy, and strategy turns into a roadmap. So your roadmap would then say, we are doing this foundational thing first now. And then you can start to say next. Well, next thing we're going to do is actually going to be this block, which is this blue one I'm referring to here. And that's not because it's the biggest return on investment. It's actually because it's strategic to us right now. Like we are actually focused on that. So we want to leverage that, and we want to be able to focus to leverage that. Then what we might do afterwards is we might do this thing. Oh, actually, no. Before we do that, whilst we're doing that, we're going to do this thing as well, right? So that's like this one. We want to do that because that paves the way to that. It's all about like unlocking value too. So this is also one of the shifts that happens a lot with platforms is a lot of things you're focused on is like unlocking value over time. So some of the techniques that you start to use more here are things like cost of delay and also just trying to piece all of those things together. So you're trying to work out what is that cost of delay? How do I then start to move towards unlocking value? And value also compounds. So this is the other thing too. You actually being strategic and piecing all of those, going back up to like these messy pictures, but you piecing all of these end users together up here and piecing all those teams together can help you piece together a story and a narrative and make a decision. It's data points, right? They might not be like quantitative data points, but they're data points nonetheless. Hey, this is something that all of these teams need. So whilst it gives a little bit of benefit to each team, or even some teams no benefit because it's not a money driving thing, this operationally across the organization is massive. Like it's leverage. That's leverage if we can get everyone to do it. So you've got to piece all these together and build that picture and build a strategy around that. So that's how you start to do that and piece that together. So hopefully that answers the question. But this is also one of the things that you need to do. This leads me into, so we can kind of go into it. I want to cycle back to storytelling, but this leads me into OKRs. What ends up happening when you have this chain is that end impact that we're just talking about, right? So end impact. And that could be monetary, it could be something else. It could be cost saving as an organization. It could be, being able to enable something for customers. That end impact is very lagging because you need to wait till that product team builds on top of your platform and delivers something to their customers to get that impact, right? Deliver some type of feature. And you're over here as a platform. So you also have this chain of metrics as well. And this is very lagging. So it takes a long time to actually see and realize those benefits, which also becomes very hard. So this is a word of caution. As a platform, I will fight very hard to not do this. I don't want to be attached to those end lagging outcomes. So my OKRs are not those things because they're outside of my control. They require these teams to work off the platform to then drive those things. What I can do though is try to, and this is one of the benefits of OKRs, is to get alignment on that. We could say that both of us agree to some type of outcome, some type of OKR, but then they would have their own OKR and I would have my own OKR and they would contribute to it. And if we can work together, we can then get that. But I would want it to be a shared thing. And ideally, this should sit somewhere in the organization where they, well, it kind of depends. OKRs don't need to mirror your org chart, but ideally it needs to sit high in the organization that's above us, right? It needs to be like a enterprise type OKR or something else, right? So we can do that, but I want to have my own ones that are like, what am I driving towards? This also means that you need to be able to build these chains. So a skill that you need to be very good at is building out KPI trees. So what you need to be able to do is say, okay, based on all of my discovery that I did, the end things that I think we can enable for customers are this, and this. And I think if we can do those things, we have this type of impact, right? Which would be great for the organization, whatever that higher level thing is. But those things require a team to actually use the platform. So what are the things that I would measure for the teams using it? And then what are the things that I own that will contribute to that? So let's go through just like a real example. This could be like a revenue uplift. We'll just take a very simple example. Now, the revenue uplift would only happen if maybe this could improve conversion rate for a team, right? So a team is trying to improve. Try and get this pen working. They're trying to improve conversion rate. Conversion rate impacts that. That's something that they can own as a product. Now, you have overlap with them. You might need to start to look at basically, you might need to originally, going down here, you might actually need to start with like adoption of your product, right? Like how many teams are actually adopting it, how many teams are actually using it, what is the usage, how are they using it, and then are they using it for things like that then is driving that and then is driving that. So you need to be very good at breaking this problem space down and building out a KPI tree. If you do this as well, this is easier if you've done that discovery. Go figure, right? But this also helps you with strategy because it will help you work out where to focus, right? It also is going to help you with that storytelling because you can then start to draw a line from like, we're building this thing all the way to impact that includes the customer. And you can really kind of piece that together and tell a compelling story around it. Make it real for your stakeholders. Just looking at questions. Whoop. I'm trying to go back to that. So one of the comments on YouTube was the goal is to build central capabilities so that not every team has to build themselves again. For example, governance rule, RAG, vector bases. Is that the same question around deciding what to build first? Yeah, okay. So that was related to the question around deciding what to build first. So let's get into this because this is good too. This is also one of the reasons why you do that discovery. So there's a few things that I do here to piece this all together. One of them is this, right? And you can, a part of this too is like, you can turn that into an opportunity solution tree too, by the way. So Teresa Torres, opportunity solution tree, really great technique. So you can have like outcome at the top. You can break that down and have multiple layers of outcomes. I actually did a stream, not a stream. Actually it was with the founder of Vistally. Teresa is an advisor for Vistally as well. I'm an advisor, so full disclosure around that. But I talked about how actually really great teams, and it's very important for platform, they do this before they even get to their opportunity solution tree. So they will break down the outcome and then they'll pick something really small and then do an OST off the back of it. But basically you would do like, you can, do this and then start to map all of those things, right? Like RAG, blah, blah, blah. And then what I want to do is I want to piece my discovery with this, right? So, okay, how, and this is why you need to do discovery. The question that I'm asking myself here is a combination of how many teams are going to benefit from this, as well as which one is going to drive towards our outcomes and our strategy the best. So I'm going to be doing this as well as what we talked about here, right? With the sequencing. So some things are just going to be more foundational. Some things are just going to have to happen before other things. So I want to take that in. So that's another input. So one input is basically reach. How many people does this impact? Then the next one is impact. So going down rice, reach, impact. So I want to do those two. But then this is where I don't follow rice anymore. The next one I want to think about is exactly that, like sequencing, which I've talked about this. If anyone who's read my newsletter or seen my stream that I did around prioritization, this is the missing piece inside rice. Rice misses urgency, right? Sequencing and that foundational stuff is urgency. Trying to do a path towards, and this is why cost of delay is such a good technique here. If this is a lot and it's a burning platform, like it's a fire, I don't know. Can I draw a fire? How do you draw a fire? That's shit. Anyways, so like if this is a burning platform, there's an urgency there. So going from here to here is important, right? That's an important input into prioritization. So I want to bring urgency into it. I also want to bring discovery. So another urgency too is pain points, right? I mentioned before right at the start, don't solve problems that don't exist yet. This is a little bit hard for platforms, but I'm actually a very big fan of trying to stick to this as much as possible with platforms. So example of what I mean by that is, let's take, so where was the examples that was here too? So, okay, so RAG, a governance rule, RAG vector database. Okay, so RAG, some of these are like, RAG is like an AI thing, right? But like governance, let's take governance. Let's take them as an example. We've got three things. let's say that governance is something that everyone is dealing with right now. Everyone has tried to solve governance in their own way. I am a big fan of doing this. I'm a big fan of allowing, let's say we got like 5 teams. I can't remember how many teams you said. But let's say we got 5 teams. I'm a big fan of allowing, don't solve it straight away. Team 1, the first team to run into governance as an issue, for them to start to try to solve governance. I'm also a fan, if you're a leader, to not have a platform team yet. If I only have one team dealing with governance, I don't need a platform, right? You can see around corners a little bit and you can say, like, oh, a lot of teams are going to have to deal with this. But I would prefer, generally, if you do decide to set up a platform team early, as the platform product manager, I'm not going to, this is important, actually, very important. I'm not going to be like, hey, pause, time out. You can't do anything with governance until I've talked to everyone. This is what happens. And this is bad. Don't do this. Until I talk to everyone and I work out every single governance edge case and corner and scenario under the sun. And then I build governance in a way that it serves everyone. What you're doing is you're solving problems that don't exist yet. And all you do is actually slow down this team and this team being able to deliver value to their customers, and which are your customers too, by the way. You're all part of the same organization. So here's how I tackle it. If we do decide to set up a platform, I will work with them, and I would maybe do some light touch along all of this, but I would just work with them. How do we solve your governance needs? What are the minimum viable governance that you need? How do we solve that? And I will build that. And then I'll wait till the next team has governance pain points. And I'll be like, cool, tell me about yours. And by the way, at this point, after I built it, I would start to be a bit more proactive. And I would start to talk to them and anticipate their needs. And then this is where you then try to understand the end user piece of the puzzle too. So you start to branch out to everyone. And then you start to solve their problems as the problems arise. But you're being strategic and you're also being very, proactive around it. So then it's not like they're coming to you with an order. You've already talked to them. You've already talked to you already got a big picture, a good picture of like their customers and the jobs to be done and what it enables and everything that you need to do. And then you can basically be like, yeah, we're already like halfway through this and we're going to do it. But you want to kind of gradually extend the platform over time across everything. So where to start first would be a combination of all of them. I don't know what your product teams are dealing with. Is RAG a bigger problem for them right now? Or is governance a bigger problem for them right now, etc.? One thing, one of my clients, we've kind of repivoted because, like, as an example, like all the governance stuff is a hell of a can of worms to like open. So we actually decided to pivot away from that, to do some dial down AI in a way that we don't need it to go heavy on governance, and we'll tackle the governance stuff later because basically it'll stopping us from getting return on investment. So like we can do some stuff and have some impact earlier before going into that. So that's a really important thing for how you think about platforms and how you roll it out. Wait until you kind of, in a way, from a leadership perspective, as a company grows, you kind of want to wait until it's a problem. Now, if you're a large company, which it sounds like you are, and you're doing AI, you're going to need these as a platform. Sure, set the platform up early. Working through that with a client right now, absolutely doing that. But don't solve problems that don't exist yet. There is a danger that our platform team, and if you own the platform, this is a danger for you, that you end up going and spending the next 12 months building a whole bunch of stuff and not being able to let any teams use what you've built. So don't do that. Let it extend and grow over time. So yeah. Cool. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if it wasn't around that. But that's an important concept. I did want to touch on that, so it was worthwhile touching. So where was I at? Talking about piecing all this together. So this is important from OKR's metrics point of view. Very important from a strategy point of view. You've got to piece all this together. Hopefully, again, you're seeing how this is, again, a senior role. It's not a junior role. It's hard to piece all this together. Different users, different teams, different needs. You've got a very long list of capabilities to build. Where do I start? I want to piece these types of pictures together. And sometimes you'll start in somewhere harder, right? But it's because it's strategic, right? Like this might be harder, but it's strategic. So let's do it, right? The strategic alignment in an organization actually matters a lot. So yeah. There's a question I know on YouTube around adoption. We're going to get to that in a second. That's my next topic. Yeah, it is my next topic. So I just want to talk a little bit more around metrics. So here's another technique that I find useful. And so I'm just trying to like give you techniques and mental models to make this super practical. I find these buckets quite good. So you can break things down, and maybe it was a poor choice of color. We shouldn't have used blue. Let's use green. So you can break these down into business like outcomes or metrics. So like this is like business. Then you've got like product ones, right? So when I say product here, I mean like the end facing product. And then you often got like user metrics. Now, from a product perspective, that would be the change in user behavior they would expect to see. For you as a platform, you might want to bucket that in here to be their metrics, because that's not necessarily like your user metrics because you've got internal teams. But then what I would think about here is like this is those internal teams that use your platform. Like what are the metrics that you have on for them, right? What are your platform metrics around that? So if you think about it as like these buckets, this can actually be a really helpful mental model to just kind of build that KPI tree and to break all of that down and to make sure that like you're not signing up from an OKR point of view up here because it's not something in your control. You need to break it down to here. But it's very important. You will be chewed apart if the only metrics you have are things like adoption because they're like, well, I don't care. I want to see like what's the real impact? What are you actually driving as a result of all of this? So you need to have this chain so you can explain it to your stakeholders. There's a platform product manager in the product mentorship, and we were working through this, and I shared I think I took a screenshot actually and threw it in the newsletter. But basically, if I kind of, based on my notes, kind of break down what we had, ultimately they're looking for some type of cost savings, right? As an organization. So you want to have that because you want to be able to align to it and say, yep, this is where we're heading. And that's important too, because from an influence storytelling point of view, your stakeholders care about that. They care less about the other things. So they want to know whether those things are happening. But you can't just try and measure cost savings because it takes a while. You've got that chain. You've got people who needs to adopt your product and actually start to use it. So her platform was around things around developer experience, particularly around observability tools and that type of stuff. So if you then chain this together, you can ask, well, how do we drive cost savings? What are some of the ways we drive cost savings? Some of the ways, just to rattle some off, which is like we have fewer incidents. So we just have fewer incidents. Another way we can do it is we resolve them faster, right? We know about them before customers even tell us about them, right? Before customers even notify about it. Like we know these things happen. Okay, that's the user. So this is the business part. And then this is the kind of like the customer impact side of the fence and some of the product metrics that will expand these as well. So how do we do that? Well, we can start to track things like mean time to resolve, mean time to like alert or first action, that type of stuff. We can track some of those. There's more, but that's some of the things that we can track. Okay. Now getting down to like what we own as a platform, we don't really own mean time to resolve because we need people to adopt it and stuff. Then we can go like, okay, how many teams are using it? How much is being used? And we can start to measure those. But then we have this really clear chain that's like, I'm not just trying to report on this because these are a little bit vanity, right? We know they are. But I'm trying to say that between the product teams and myself, we have overlap, or for her, we have overlap here on these types of metrics. And I control this, and I'm going to try and move these metrics up, and they're going to, and then to combine, we're going to track these metrics, and then we should see these come, and then we should see these come over time as well. But you need to be able to have all of that and piece it all together. That's like the really, really important piece of the puzzle. And very important, again, we talked about this before with the strategy piece. What don't you own, right? That's not you. And what is you, right? Very important to also be very clear about all of that. around that. Cool. What else do I have in this? This is also important too, because this can take months, sometimes years to kind of see. They can quite kind of be very long. You can't wait that long for a feedback cycle, right? So you need shorter term feedback around all of that. This will get into adoption. So this will be my segue into adoption. One thing to think about here that you often have to do is sometimes, quite often, you have to baseline. You need to be able to baseline pre-using your platform and then post. So this is something else that you often don't need to deal with when you're customer-facing products in particular, is you're not that concerned about like, baselining and stuff, but you need to do these types of things. So things that we've done in the past, I've worked with, again, the product manager and the product mentorship who owns a platform. We've gone, okay, let's take a 3-month roll-in. And I'm about to do this now. The window that we took is 1 month. And we're taking the measures now. I'm comfortable with it extended to 6 weeks. I've already said that to the team. But basically, I want to take the last 6 weeks or last month, last 6 weeks, if we don't think month is a good enough data point. And then for that platform PM, we took the last 3 months. So you want to take the last 3 months up until they adopted your platform. You basically want to look at all of these metrics, right? Like I want to look at mean time to resolve, these types of things. And then what I want to do is post-adoption, I want to have a roll-in 3-month average. And I want to see the trend. Is it trending up? Is it trending down? What's happening there? So you want to be able to see, because you want to be able to have a compare and contrast between post, like pre and then post, like what was the case. Now the window is going to be dependent on the platform, depends on the team, like what is an adequate window. The reason why we chose 3 months, to give you an example here, was we actually went through the last 12 months of data. And what we saw was, naturally with incidents, there's a lot of like peaks and troughs, right? Like things kind of go up and kind of go down. So this was month by month data across 12 months. And what we concluded was like, you can't do a month because there's spikes and there's troughs. And we thought, based on what we could see, was 3 months was a pretty good window. It tends to even out. Like you'll pick up one spike and one trough and then an average month. So 3 months is a pretty good window of time to do that. And then you track it over time as well. But this is going to be lagging, right? It's not going to be something you see immediate impact to. So very important around that. And this is the type of stuff, by the way, like even just this and that like KPI tree like this, that's a KPI tree. This is what I want to get stakeholders to agree on. I don't want to be an order taker. I want them to agree on this. And this is the metrics and stuff that I'm moving. I'm not trying to, like, we're not here to take your orders and just deliver it. We're working towards this. We're working towards cost savings. We're going to do it via these avenues. And we're going to track these metrics on the teams that have adopted it. All right. And this also helps you piece a story together to say, well, the reason why you're not seeing this number drop is because we haven't had that many people adopt it. And let's talk about some adoption strategies now, because I know that was a question around here from YouTube about how do you increase adoption of platform features? What communication channels do you use? Where do you use self-service in this? Yeah. So let's touch that and a few other things. So, but this can also help you put pressure on leaders to say, well, help me here, right? But I am a big fan of treating releasing the same as what you do with products and go-to-market. You just need to adapt it a little bit for internal teams. There's a concept known as the diffusion of innovation. It's basically like a bell curve that basically, terrible. I don't know what's wrong with me today. I'm just not doing a very good job of drawing. So diffusion of innovation, it basically says like there's innovators, there's early adopters, there's early majority, and then there's late majority, and then laggards. Innovators adopt things really, really quickly. They're about 2.5%. I think this is like 12 odd percent or 14 or 16%, something like that, thereabouts. And then about the same, 16%, 16%, and then 16%, I think, something like that. Works out to be something like that. I think this is less, and then these two combined is 16. Anyways, it's roughly that as a breakdown, whatever the math works out to be. Somebody can look that up. Maybe we can look it up too. But the math doesn't really matter. The important part is that You will have a spread of these people in your organization. If your organization is big enough, you're going to have a spread across all of this. So I actually think these numbers are wrong off memory. 16 on either side. These are like 30 odd, 32 or something. That feels right. Okay. So you're going to have a spread across all of this. This means that you will have early adopters and innovators in your company. You can leverage them, and you absolutely should leverage them. So, I talked about before about like setting up as like a Slack channel or like a Teams channel with some people. Like find some of those early adopters, people who give you really good feedback, are really engaged, add them to the channel, work with them, chat with them. It's a great channel to even just drop things that you're thinking about. Hey, you're thinking about this. Here's a prototype, whatever, right? Like you can drop things to them. You can communicate with them. You leverage them for early stuff. When I'm rolling something new out, I also want to leverage them, which means I generally want to run some type of pilot. You want to avoid mandate mass rollouts. Just like big bang releases to the market are a bad idea, they are also a bad idea internally. For some reason, because we feel like we're in control of it internally, we want to mandate it. And I kind of get it. Like, and this is part of the difficulty in the role. If people want to see like this cost saving benefit, they just want to push for mandates, right? Mandate everybody for it. The problem with that is like you need to solve, there's a few problems with it. Number one problem is if it is not that good, these people, early majority, late majority laggards, they are not very forgiving. They will begrudgingly use your product, if your platform. If it's not great, they will complain about it. They'll whinge, so much so that they might even just stop using it altogether and do some type of workaround, right? You don't want that. So you just actually just piss people off, and it's not great. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is if you approached it the way I talked about before, about like not solving problems that didn't exist yet, then you are actually taking a more iterative and incremental approach to delivering your platform. So your platform might not be ready for the masses. And to me, that's a good thing, right? Like let's roll it out slowly, and let's slowly solve their problems and get more and more people on and more people on. Because if you can give some value to a small set of people earlier, then let's do that. So the other problem that this creates is, and this is what big releases create, is you rather than like, if I graphed it this way, it's like you build for ages and then like value, right? Value shoots up, as opposed to trying to, step your way there. That's really like the differences between it. I would prefer to do the step. And I would even visualize that. I've drawn a lot like that to try to convince stakeholders around that. So they're your two big problems. There's other problems with it. The other problem too is like there's no opportunity to give feedback and like iterate on the feedback. Yeah, so you kind of want to do that, which means that when you're rolling things out internally, you don't want to mandate, you want to do pilots. So here's how I think about it. And I've drawn this for a platform team that I worked with. This was like 2 years ago now, actually. I said, think about, and this is a good example of adapting core product concepts to platform, right? So if you think about like total addressable market, it's like how people think about it, like TAM. We love that term. It's a great term. It's a great one because it's a vanity metric. It makes us feel good. It's a very big number. The TAM is billions or trillions of dollars, right? Millions of people, billions of people. We love TAM. Okay, so TAM's terrible because it's trash because it's it's a vanity one. But the way I said was like, think about this. Your TAM is every current product team in the organization that has the problems that you solve, and any future team that may exist in the future that doesn't exist today that might also have the same problems, right? That's your TAM, right? Current and potential future teams. It's your total addressable market. What you want to do is you want to say, okay, how much of them, and this is called SAM or serviceable addressable market. In other words, what percentage of them can you currently service with your current platform, right? Then you've got one last circle, which I'll put in a different color. You've got your market share. And this is where the number becomes real. Like what is your actual number of customers? Like, stop pitching me your TAM. Like, tell me what's your actual numbers. But the same thing happens here. This is all current and future teams that will have your problem, right? Because your platform might not serve every single team in the organization. Let's take the observability platform example. It would be every single engineer and product that needs observability, which would be basically every single software team that is going to exist in this company that either exists today or will exist in the future. That's their TAM. Now, your SAM would be based on your features and your functionality. What do you enable today? What can people actually do? So observability, alerting and monitoring for certain types of applications, right? Node, JS, and React, applications, as an example. That's your serviceable market. So if you looked at all software teams in an organization, who fall into that bucket? Okay, that's your SAM. And then this is like your actual users, who is actually using it, all right? So the reason why I drew this out is because, as I was saying to them, and this is how you think about this, your job is to just expand that. It's not about mandating, right? I would prefer to expand it, like expand it to that and then push your SAM out. So you got a bigger and bigger and bigger circle, right? I would prefer to do it via word of mouth. I would prefer to do it in a way that all the engineers are talking to all the other engineers and they're all telling each other how great it is to use this platform and how easy it is. And then you kind of go from there. I know that Stripe is big now and people don't love it as much as they do. But I remember when Stripe came on the scene. I remember when we migrated off Braintree onto it. I was working on an app at the time. And I remember just like engineers loved it, right? Stripe did this so well. Like just being able to build something for engineers that they love and it's easy to use and good to use. And they just told everyone and was like, I don't want to use anything other than Stripe. Like years later, which was recent, like a couple of years ago, I was trying to co-found something and we closed it down. But like, I remember hiring some engineers and we were looking at some other payment platforms and we're like, let's try and buy something, not necessarily build. But like the engineers was like, they were just like, I would just prefer to use Stripe than to try to use some other platform. But yeah, so that's kind of where you want to get to. So the way I think about rollout is I think about it like that. I think about exactly like how you would do it. So what I want to do is I want to find early adopters and stuff. I want to pilot it with them. And then I want to start to leverage them to expand it to all of their peers. So if we go serviceable market, which might be like all these 5 teams in this area. I might not get all the teams on it. I might like get 2 teams. Let's pilot it. And then I want to use those 2 teams to tell everybody else to get onto it. And then that's how we get onto it. And then we go to the next area and the next area and the next area. And we go bigger and bigger and bigger. And as we do that, we build more features and functionality, which enable our SAM to get bigger. And as we do that, we go through the same process. We pilot it with them. We get a few people using it. We get everybody using it in that area. We add more features and functionalities. We move to the next one. That's how I approach the rollout and adoption. And it's the same approach that I do from a B2C type stuff or B2B point of view. Even my product mentorship, I did this. I ran a closed invite only beta. I then opened a wait list. I then invited some of those people in the wait list in, and then I kind of did a public launch, right? What you can start to do too is you can hockey stick this. Once you start to feel like you're doing a really good job and it's actually feedback is really, really good, then you can start to do more launch activities. So to talk about like communication channels and stuff, this is where there's a difference between, pilot. If it's a small pilot, comms channel, so let's just paint this out, right? I might go pilot. I might go to beta. Maybe I don't have a beta, or maybe I do. We can talk about a few and then like launch. This is how I think about it. Pilot, I'm probably setting up a Slack. Whoops. Telling you, I can't write today. I feel dyslexic. So I would set up like a Slack channel with them. I'd probably have like weekly or some regular time with them. I would also leverage them so you want that feedback cycle going on, right? So they give you feedback, you create new prototypes. And I say prototypes there, it could be like improvements to JSON, improvements to documentation, changes to the API, that type of stuff. So, and I want to run those changes with them, get them using it, get their feedback, kind of run through those cycles. And then I want to move to a bigger group. When I move to a bigger group, I might not have a Slack channel anymore. I might just, be sending out like weekly, like week notes to them all. So like that's just like a weekly comms that's like, here's what's happening, here's the changes that happened this week, here's blah. If it's small enough, I might still go around to everyone. So like these pilots, I might actually still go around to everyone one-on-one and be like, hey, we're rolling this new thing out tomorrow. Here's what it looks like. Here's this, here's that, hold their hand through it, let them ask all these questions, stuff like that. And even pre the pilot, I'm going to do that and engage them. I'm going through this right now with a client. We started with the leaders to just get their buy-in and get like them across like the pilot and everything, leaders. And then now we're actually going out to the individual teams. And as we're walking them through what we've done and what the pilot is, I'm asking for volunteers. So the volunteers are going to be part of the pilot. And then we're going to set up these things with them. And then we're going to roll it out and go broader. And then we can start to have like a beta. And then as we go for launch, at this point, I'm going to do a similar thing to what we're doing now, where we're doing a bit of a roadshow. I'm going to do a launch roadshow. So at this stage, I might set up meetings with everyone again. I might put it in the company newsletter if we have one. I might get some senior leaders to do an announcement about it. Might even get them to come talk about it. I might even do some videos for real too. I've done this in the past. Videos with these people, get testimonials, get verbatims from them. You treat it like a B2C product, right? Like I would love to get these engineers and these teams talk about how great the platform's been for them, the benefits that they've got from it, and package it all up and share it all around the organization. Because all of the reality is it's all humans, we're all people, and it's all about human psychology. So social proof, hearing it from a peer, others watching a video and a testimonial of other people saying that it was good, that convinces you that it's worth doing. And when you get to the launch side, maybe I can push a little bit harder on the dates. Maybe I can push a little bit harder on that, but I want to make sure, like, classic product practices, I want to nail it before I scale it. I want to have high degree of confidence that if I do push a mandate, I've had a pilot users, they all love it. It's working really, really well. It's actually driving meaningful outcomes for them. I can package all of that up into a really good story, have really good metrics on it. I can share those stories with leaders, with other teams, and I can actually try and get them, use that to convince them to adopt it. So that's how I do it. And then you still got like your typical things, right? Like you would have release notes. So big fan. One of the teams that I mentioned before about the Sam Tam thing, we were doing release notes and we're doing a monthly newsletter, which included, which basically, if you think about your monthly newsletter, where did I draw that? Your monthly newsletter it's a choice. Do you send it out to your TAM, to everyone, or do you send it out to your SAM and expand it over time? That's up to you. Depends on how much you want, like, because there's a trade-off. The trade-off is if I start sending it out to everyone and people who are really far away on the roadmap, they just keep getting these monthly emails and they're like, when's my turn? And it's kind of like noise for them. It's not really helpful for them. But yeah, they are it off the top of my head. Let me know if that didn't answer the question, but hopefully that was helpful. I do that. Oh, you did have one other thing in there about self-service. So where I want to try to get to is I want to graduate. So here is high touch hand holding, and here is more self-service. I'm a big fan of platforms becoming self-service because otherwise you are always in it. So I think of it like, like those two wedges, people like you draw it like this, right? So like high touch at the start and then it becomes self-service over time. So as I move through it, so I want the beta to be less high touch than the pilot. Another reason why actually running multiple stages of this. And by the way, you don't need to call it beta if you want to. You can just have different phases of the pilot and the pilot just gets bigger. But you want to scale it up. And as you scale it up, you want to start to move towards self-service because you want to, like, again, the next time we bring in people, the pilot, we brought in 5 people or 5 teams. The next one, let's double it or triple it, 15 teams, and let's see if we can do it in the same amount of time. So we need to make it more self-service, easier for them to do, and you just kind of like set yourself those challenges and actually try to overcome them. So that's how I would approach that. But self-service for platforms for sure. You want to really get there. The only way you're going to get there is by moving your way up through this. Another reason why the big bang thing doesn't really work, because like you mandate it for everyone, and then like you haven't actually tested and proven out the self-service model. You're just assuming it's going to work. And I can tell you, and maybe you've been there, it's probably not going to work. It's going to have a bunch of issues. It's going to be broken. People aren't going to be happy. You're going to have a lot of people screaming at you. It's going to be a very stressful month or quarter, and it's going to be a nightmare. So as much as you can avoid doing that as possible, the better. Here's some things that can help to influence there if it's helpful. So I like to frame all of this as risk, right? Like it's all about de-risking. So most of the time they get this, especially large enterprises, like there's risk involved in our platform. So we need to be careful about the risk. And there's also risk management, right? Like how do we make sure we have the right guardrails inside the platform and we build to all of those things. So I like to frame things as risk because stakeholders get it. And it's like, well, this is why we're not going to do a big bang. Because imagine if we force everybody onto it and we have problems and like half the organization's products go down overnight. Like that's a problem. We don't want that. So let's start somewhere low risk. Let's start with volunteers and let's kind of build out. Another thing you might need to do, and I can go back to this picture actually to just illustrate this, whilst you go through these phases, you might actually run things parallel, right? So you might have a parallel run where they're using your platform, but they're also not using your platform. And we can have both runs running. For the person who's working on AI stuff and asked the question, this is something you should do with AI. This is something that is emerging as a best practice. Is something that I'm doing with my clients. We're doing because part of it is like keep the human doing it, right? If the AI is going to replace the human side, and then get AI, and then you want to compare and you want to see like, is that, you know, how many human errors were there? How many AI errors were there? You know, how to like compare. This is also a great data point to give confidence to even the regulator if you have to, but regulators, stakeholders, all of those types of people, give them confidence that like what you're building is actually good and it's going to work, and you've built the guardrails in, and it's no worse than the current experience. If anything, is better. So you want to do that. So that's another reason why you want to do that. And like I said, like I find just talking about risk and stuff as just a really good framing. They get it. They understand risk. But in saying that, you still need to navigate all of that. There is going to be executive pressure. There's going to be downward pressure on you about rolling it out. You've got to kind of stick with that. Let me just quickly check if there's any questions related to this before I get into the last piece of all of this, which is getting into like versioning, backwards compatibility, and trying to manage the next stage of after you've released side of the fence. There are questions I'm going to hold till a bit later. Okay, I think we're good. We'll tackle the other questions just after this. So once you then launch and you now have users on board, you have a new problem that is unique to, not completely unique to platforms, but it's definitely something that platforms experience and not very few products actually experience. So let me draw that picture that I had before again. So you're a platform. You've done all of that good work. You started to expand your target market. You started to expand your serviceable market. You've got more market share. People are using it. So you've now got like this product and this product and this team. You know what? I just thought about a customer-facing platform that I didn't work on personally, but I coached a team and it was part of the strategy that I helped put together. Search is a capability. If you've got apps and you've got the web and you've got other things, right? Everyone needs search. And if you've got different product lines across them, this was a media company. So you can imagine you've got audio and podcasts, you've got like video footage, you've got news articles and just blog and text articles. You if everyone builds search for their own silo, you don't have a global search capability, right? Because you don't have something that can cross-cut all of that. So what we did, and this is a great example too of allowing the problems to happen. Each team already had search. We didn't stop them from doing search. I'm not like, don't build search for yourself. But what we were trying to do is like, okay, can we build search in a way that it works for, like, we can do this global thing? And this is a strategy, right? So the strategy here was to have a global search that can be cross-cutting across multiple apps, multiple webs, multiple mediums. And it can be something that everyone can then plug in and use, and it will give a better experience, right? So if you think about the customer experience at the end, there's obviously like podcasts that have video. And then there's also like sometimes you're in a certain app. Let's say you're in the audio type podcast app, and then you want to look for a video, right? Yes, you can switch apps, but you can also not have to switch apps to do that. Well, or at least you can search and then you can kind of deep link across. And sometimes, and there's a good overlap between that, sometimes you're searching for a podcast and you see that there's a video version and you're like, hey, actually, I'll like to open that. And then you open it and you kind of jump across. So we started building this search capability, and that was something that the teams could then basically pick up and plug in. And yeah, so that is a customer facing platform. Good example. So cool. Anyways, what I was saying. So now you've got like multiple teams working on your thing. So now you've got this problem, which is like, what about we're on V1? What about if we update it to V2? We're rolling out some new features, some new capabilities. Some of those changes have a knock-on impact. Some of those changes actually impact, what we were doing or working on before, or what we had before. Like changes to APIs as an example, right? So this has a knock-on impact. Now, when you've got all of these teams using it, if you force everyone to move on to version 2 at the same time, it is just dependency nightmare. You become full-time release manager. You're going around to everyone, trying to line them up. Like, can you do it this quarter? What sprint can you do it? Can you get it done now? Can you get it done then? And then you're trying to align all the docs, and then you can go back to the stakeholders because they're like, when is this new platform's going in? We want to start seeing value out of it. And it's a nightmare. Okay. You've probably been there. Absolute nightmare trying to manage all of that. So the way that you get out of it is you decouple this. Now, this is a hard pill to swallow for some companies because they don't understand, like they struggle with this concept because they view IT and stuff as a cost, right? But I actually think it's very hard to do the numbers on this, but I think the cost of trying to align everyone, get everybody aligned, put all that energy into it is actually more expensive than doing what I'm going to suggest. What you end up doing is you end up having multiple versions run at any given time. So let's say you've got V1 running, V1, and then you release V2, and you can release, by the way, actually, let's draw it like this. You can release V2 and nobody's using it. Cool, that's fine. V2 is in production. And then going back to the question that was on YouTube about communication channels, I love this because now I can go around to everyone and say, hey, V2 is available, has all of these new benefits. And by the way, if you've done your discovery really well, you can pitch to them using it, right? You have a really good story about how they should use it. And if anything, I want to go around to them and try and get some of them on as first users to run as a pilot. So this is another thing. V2 could be launched, but launched as pilot or beta, right? Like, or early access, whatever. They're all the same thing. People just like giving it different names, right? Like research. What did they call it? Like research preview, I think Anthropic calls it. But anyways, it's just like a beta early access type thing. So you can do that. And if you've done your discovery really well, you know the pain points and the capabilities that it solves. So you can actually go to them and actually try and pitch to them and get them to kind of come on board as the first lot of users. So I love this. So then let's say you get one to come over. Sweet, right? And then you get another to come over. Then you get another to come over. And then you get another to come over. And then you can get rid of V1, right? You can deprecate that, turn it off. Everyone's now on V2. Now, obviously, you can get yourself into a position where, let me just erase some stuff and we'll draw it another way. you can get yourself into a position where, let's say you've got V3, this team's on V3, you got V2, these two teams are on it, you got V1. Let me draw a few more teams so we can make this more complicated. You can see where I'm going with this, right? We'll go 4, 5, just to keep it simple. All right. So now you got 5 versions running. That is also a problem, and that is also a nightmare. Now, how many versions do you run parallel at any given time is a bit of a you decision, company decision. So there's obviously a cost involved. If we have multiple instances running at the same time, there is infrastructure costs, right? So we're paying AWS, Google Cloud, or whoever more money. So there is a cost there. There is also a maintenance cost, right? So if V2 goes down and has an issue, you need to fix it if it's critical. If it's not critical, you can tell them that issue doesn't exist in V3 and 4 and 5. You are on a really old version. You should just upgrade, like stop complaining, upgrade type thing, right? But if it's a critical failure, you need to deal with it. So how do you manage this is part of it. What I like to do, this is something that I learned, and I actually took inspiration from the open source community for this. So there's a few things from the open source that we can talk about that I took inspiration from. But one of them is to have a window, right? Have a window. How many versions are you going to have available at any given time? Let's just say the window is 3. So when you're about to roll out version 5, you have to go. So let's assume this person's on 2. In that case, you have to go back to these teams and you have to tell them, hey, by the way, version 5 is coming out. Once version 5 comes out, version 2 will be going into end of life and we'll be turning it off in 6 months or 3 months, whatever time window you want to give. And what you do is you have a window of, and this is also based on cost, right? So the window is like, how many versions can I have that I don't burn a ton of money and make my life really difficult having to maintain them, whilst also not being super disruptive to everyone. Because, and I'm sure you've been there, if you're telling them to upgrade this quarter, they're like, I can't do it this quarter. I've got like all of these other things. And then they escalate to their management and their leadership. And that comes across to you and they're like, do they have to upgrade? Can you blah, 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 blah. And then you're in this big like fight all the time. So how do you do it in a way that is not that disruptive, but it's also not a nightmare for you? So you need to find that balance. Like what is that balance will be dependent on you as a company and stuff. Usually 3 is a pretty good window, by the way. 2 to 3 is a good window around that. And then I want to give them a window of opportunity to upgrade. So once 5 goes live, it's not like 2 gets turned off straight away, although you can do that. Depends on how much runway you have till 5. So this is also dependent on how quickly you build and how quickly you release. So let's say that you don't bring out a new version every other month or every other week. Then you could probably give them a heads up to say, we're currently working on, like, V4 just came out. We're going to start working on V5. V5 is going to take us 3 to 4 months, but when we finish it, you're going to have to get off it. So you're either going to align to jump onto V5 with us, or I recommend you create in some capacity in the next 3 to 4 months to just upgrade so you don't get caught out. So that's how you do it. And then the point about communicating new features and new adoption and stuff, this is also something you need to communicate. So these people become like a pool of your user base that you need to also manage and maintain, which brings me to a concept that is very handy for product in general. But if you don't master this for like other products, it's sometimes okay because there's other people worried about it. But internal products, you don't have like a marketing manager or a product marketing manager for you. So you've got to be able to manage all this. This is how I think about it. There's you and the product, and you're in the center, right? So in this case, it's the platform. There's a whole suite of activities and communication that happens that is all internal, right? And when I say internal makes sense when you're a customer-facing product. So for a platform, I would think about this as like delivery, development, discovery stuff, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff around day-to-day building of the platform, right? So discovery and delivery. When I say delivery, I don't mean just development. I mean discovery too. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So this is your discovery activities. This is your week notes. This is your stakeholder comms, your one-on-ones with stakeholders, your meeting forums, your strategy updates, blah, 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 right? Whole bunch of stuff going on there. And then there's also a whole suite of activity that happens externally, but for us, from a platform point of view, it's still internal, but it's really go to market and release stuff. And again, like I said, often with like B2C type products, you've got a whole marketing department and stuff that's helping you with this. But from a platform perspective, you've got to play product marketing manager too, unless they give you somebody that can help. By the way, you should lobby for this. So the Tam Sam example, we did this. We lobbied and we got 2 people because it was a platform that we had 3 teams. So when we basically got 2 people and we formed a bit of a go-to-market team and engagement team. And those 2 people were the champions to really be responsible for this side of the fence. But this is stuff like release notes, release activities, those comms for like updates of things that are coming out, the launch activities if you want, the pilot groups, the betas, all of those types of engagement stuff. So if you have some people that can help you do that, fantastic. And we tasked them with that, design the pilot program, engage the pilot program. They created the Teams channel for this. They found the pilot users. They set up the whole thing. Awesome. Most of the time, you're not going to have this. It's going to be you. So this is a useful mental model because most of the time we are far too heavy over here and this side's being neglected. So I draw this to hopefully help you understand. This is a good product management concept in general, but really important for platforms. And everything that I'm talking about here with like this release and version and stuff is all of that right-hand side of the fence. So you got to get really, really good at that as well. And you've got to adapt it, right? Like you've got to understand like, okay, I need to start to think about versioning. I need to think about those windows. I need to think about engaging people so they know, giving them adequate heads up. Because if I forget to do that, and then suddenly I'm rushing and telling them last minute, then like they're not gonna jump upgrade last minute, right? Like it's just not going to happen around that. So that's a very, very important concept around that. Cool. So all in all, we've covered a lot. Technically, there's probably a bit more that we can go into, but I think I just want to get into questions now. I think I've covered it. I've gone through my big list really around that. A lot of these too, hopefully you can see like we're starting to treat a platform like a product. Like this is where to me, it very much is a senior role because you need to take core product concepts and you need to start to adapt it. So like when I'm interviewing people, I now need to consider like this big, where do we draw it? We drew a lot of pictures. I need to consider this big web of things, right? So I need to map out my users. It's not so simple as like, oh, I have one user or one persona or one archetype, right? Or one set of users and like 4 personas. I've got like 5 different, fundamentally different sets of end users who each have 5 different segments within it. So I've got like 25 now, and I've got like 50 internal teams that I need to talk to. So like, like how do you deal with that? And really senior people are really good at like breaking that down. So this is another reason why I say avoid the mandate and avoid the big bang, avoid solving problems that don't exist yet. Because even from your perspective and your own capability and not capability, you can be capable of doing it. Your own capacity, like there is just not enough hours in the day to go talk to 50 teams and 25 different segments of users. Like it's just not. So you've got to break it down. And that means you actually have to have a strategy. You've got to have a vision on where this platform's going. You have to have a strategy. You've got to break those goals down and find a segment to start with and then go from there. And in order to do that, you might need to do like a really quick, like lay off the land, go and talk to as many people as possible. But you can't deeply invest into talking to everyone. You just need enough to kind of pick a direction and get going. So there's like that. There's also like, like the stakeholder management side of the fence just gets exponentially harder. Like you not being intentional about stakeholder management and how you engage your stakeholders probably fine when you've got a handful of stakeholders. When you've got dozens of stakeholders, you've got to do this. You've got to have a framework. You've got to think about how do I really prioritize my time, right? Like if you're out here in the indirect informed bucket, like we're not having a one-on-one, like we can have an ad hoc one if you really want to have a chat, but like we're not. Like I just don't have time for you. Like sorry type thing, right? Um, so how do you do that, as well as, metrics get exponentially harder. Like we've got to build this chain around that. We also got to get agreement with other parts of the business and kind of deal with those trade-offs between all of that. Like, can we get alignment on goals around that? So again, harder. Again, strategy becomes harder because you've got multiple like inputs, but again, product strategies applicable. And then all this release go to market stuff, TAM, SAM, all of it's the same, same product concepts. This is the same flow you should be doing for your customer facing products, but you need to adapt it to internally. And then you've got like the added pressure of like politics and et cetera and et cetera. Cool. All right, let's go through some of the questions I haven't already. And if you have further questions, or if there's something I haven't gotten deep enough in, we have a follow-up question, throw it in. Let's answer them. Let's kind of get into it. Okay, so we're going to scroll up a little bit, going back to some older questions. Concrete examples, we did that. Okay, we did that. Okay, this one. So Biplab, sorry if I pronounced somebody's name wrong, asked, how do you measure the value delivered by platform products apart from CSAT and NPS? Okay, so I think that might have been asked before I got to the metrics part, but good question. And let's just I was going to say double click, and I hate saying that. So like you all could have been angry at me if I said it. I was about to be angry at myself. Okay, so you need to build this chain. So what I think is really important, I wish I could just give you the example. I wish I could just show you what I've done for a client. I can't. let me just because I did this the other week. Hence why the newsletter post that went out this week, if anyone got it the other day, yesterday, it was about metrics because I kind of went through this. So what we want to do, and I'm going to try and generalize this. Okay, there is a revenue growth. We'll just call it growth. There is a growth target, right? That's the long-term one. Now, we believe that we can free up capacity, right? This is actually a longer chain. So if we free up capacity, we will have people doing different activities, is what I'm just going to say. Different things. Those different things are going to be drivers towards growth. And we want to take away capacity. And we're basically going to take away capacity by building some capabilities that they can then use those capabilities, right? So platform. And they can use those capabilities. Those capabilities are going to then free up capacity. They can do other things. They can kind of drive towards growth. Okay, cool. Now, we absolutely have things like CSAT and stuff, right? So one of the things that we're going to measure is customer ease. So once they adopt it and they actually, do the thing, like build on it, we want to measure ease, right? So ease is definitely a thing. I absolutely want to measure adoption and usage too. And I want to measure like when I say usage, I mean like, do they you try it once and then just like move off, like, or are they still using the platform and they're starting to use it for other use cases, right? I also going to look at retention over time as well. So are they still using the platform? Have they pivoted to something else? Have they moved away from it? There is churn on platforms too. Teams would just be like, I'm going to stop using you. We're going to do something else. I want to look at some of those things as well. Another thing that we're going to measure is we're doing a pilot, right? So at the end of the pilots, it's going to be 6 weeks. And I think the pilot's just going to get extended and we're just going to expand. But I want to do, you can look it up. It's called it's in Sean Ellis. I think it's in his growth hacking book. It is. Sean Ellis, growth hacking book. He talks about a product market fit test, which is basically you ask your users, and this was for B2C products, but you can use it for platforms. I love using this for features, by the way. You can ask a question, which is basically like, how disappointed would you be if you could no longer use this platform, right? Or this capability or this feature. And you basically give them like 3 to 4 answers. And It's like I'm no longer using it. I'd be disappointed. I wouldn't be disappointed, or I would be disappointed. I'll be very disappointed. And what you're looking for is what he says is you're looking for like 40 odd percent to be to be around, yeah, to be very disappointed. Sorry. So we're going to ask that question as well. So you can come up with a lot of different metrics around this about how you can measure that. But then also what I want is I want to have that chain, because I want to be able to communicate that chain as well. So hopefully, whether that was answered. I think I just saw a message about answered. So I don't know if that was answered. Hopefully this was still just a useful anyways, as another example. Oh, the structuring question is a good one. It's a big one. Okay. Let's touch on the structure one. Okay. So Mario asked, how do you suggest structuring a platform product management team when there are like 10 products the platform serves? This is got a lot. This is like topologies type question. And it's very hard without knowing your context, because the question is, how does the platform break down? So like I alluded to, Visa, Amazon and stuff like that, Netflix would have multiple platforms because because they're big enough that it's not like there's one platform. It's like the infrastructure breaks down into multiple things. So let's just use some tangible examples and hopefully it's useful. And then we can feel free to give me some more context and we can kind of go from there. So if you're like the head of platforms, right? So you own platforms. That would mean that like the platforms is the organization is big enough that we've got multiple platforms, and you said 10 products, right? Where I would start is what's the first biggest pain point? So I would try and prioritize across those 10 products. And maybe it's not everyone, maybe it's like 6 of them are dealing with the same pain point. I would start there. I would build one team to build a platform to serve those however many, right? 6 teams. Build a platform to serve them. Then I would get that team. This is how I normally approach it. I would get that team to keep extending the platform until there's a point where we feel like they're either starting to move into new territory that probably could be another team, or they have gotten that big that we actually need to think about splitting it. And then you look at the platform that they've built and then you say, how do we have 2 teams looking after this? And then 3 teams, and then 4 teams, and then 5 teams. So what you do is, as you build, this is again another reason why you don't get big bang, is I want to start in one spot, and I want to expand from there. So the same thing as the TAM SAM thing, right? TAM SAM thing, and keep expanding, and then split the teams. And by the way, we ended up with 3 teams, and they could end up with more teams. I think they still have 3 teams right now. Oh, maybe they got 4, but we started with 1. So the platform had, and it was the same, right? So if you had the TAM, the original SAM was like this, and it was 1 team looking after it. And then it grew to this, and then we hired a second team. And then we proactively hired a third team soon after, because we knew we were expanding. And then at that stage, we got those 2 people to help us with like the go-to-market stuff. But that's how we kind of tackled it. Now, what's the best split of what that looks like? It depends on your product, right? So if you let's just take some of the AI stuff right now as an example. So talk about some fun stuff. How even just list it out. What does it break down to be? There's governance. There's things like RAG. There's things like evals. Evals can break down too to like offline evals. So that's like evals happening in tests and stuff, to online, which is like real time evals. You got observability / monitoring / logging, which is something different, right? Like, so that can break down to like the infrastructure side and the observability of the actual agents, right? Are the agents running, in other words? But you've also got observability in terms of like products like Langfuse and stuff. Maybe you don't know these products, it's fine. The idea is like agents are doing stuff. What is the stuff that they're doing, right? Like if I don't have visibility into that, it's almost like printing your train of thought. think about like when you're doing something, if there was like a running monologue and somebody was just printing your train of thought, that's what you want to do. Like agents are doing stuff. I want to print it. Now, for those who haven't built AI agents before, when you're in chat, you see that like when you're using chat, you can see that like that running, you can see what it's doing because the AI companies have built their products in a way to do that for you. I believe one of the reasons why they did that is trust, right? You kind of want to see and plus feedback. Like if you just see like a loading bar and you don't know it's doing anything, that's stressful for you. But if you build an agent that's sitting on a cloud somewhere in infrastructure, doing a bunch of stuff, you don't know. You've got no visibility over it. It's doing stuff like what is the stuff you're doing? That stuff can also link back into some of the governance stuff. So there's like kind of overlap there. So if there's overlap there, do you make that the same team? The same team that's going to own governance also owns basically like observability of like agents, like what are agents doing? Login. Trying to think of the term for it. Anyways, so there's more, but like you can break it down like this, and then you can say like, okay, evals is like probably a team, especially if you want to build like evaluation infrastructure around that. Is RAG a team? I don't know. Maybe it is. If you want to build infrastructure that can be plug and play and very easy for teams to do that, like kind of like Chatbase does very well. But yeah, so like it's hard to give you an exact answer. But again, how I would tackle this is I would just start somewhere. Where should we start? Let's just start with offline evals, and then let's expand to online. And when we do that, maybe we split the team into two teams. Maybe we do. And then when we move from there, maybe we move to some simple observability, and then that starts to touch on governance. Is that a separate team? Okay, maybe it is. And then et cetera, et cetera. That's how I would tackle it. That helps answer that question. Hey, Abraham. I just saw the saying hi to the room. Hey. I know that's an old one, but like getting through the comments. I saw him in real time, but yeah. How do you manage? Okay, here. Panjal asked, how do you manage user/customer experience from a platform perspective? Okay, so if you're referring to end user, end customer is what I'm going to assume there, it is hard for you to manage. So the way in a way too, it's arguably not your responsibility. Maybe you're not accountable for it. You're probably still responsible for it. If you do something in the platform that has a negative impact to customers, that's a problem. We all agree on that. There are things that will bleed through, absolutely. And this is another reason why I started where I started. You need to understand what that bleed through is and what that impact is. Because if you can understand that impact, you might build things in a different way. You might preempt things that the product teams building on your platform might not have preempted. Things like redundancy, right? Like, do you cache things so it's offline so things don't just break straight away and it disrupts the end user experience? Like, you need to think about those things. Like, what does end user experience look like when they build on top of your platform? And the only way you're going to get that is by having a good and deep understanding of both, that like end user and the platform. If you said no, if the no is because the assumption that I made, because I just saw the no come up, what do you mean? Do you mean like the internal teams using your platform then, like your users in that regards? If that's the case, then give me a little bit more context of what you mean by the experience of the platform. Like how, yeah, give me a little bit more context. See if I can answer that better. Okay. Whilst you maybe give me some more context around that, Federico said, internal products also means internal competition. Absolutely. One of the hard things around platforms is having to deal with politics and stakeholders and stuff like that. Yep. Product teams will deliver their business value no matter what, using your platform or what it takes, or whatever makes more sense. Here it is the key part. Any tip for internal competition of a generalist platform versus ad hoc solutions? So absolutely. And this is another reason why I'm a big, like, my problem is I have seen that big bang approach with platforms happen so many times and it didn't go well. And one of the ways that it doesn't go well is exactly this. People end up being like, the platform's shit. I'm not going to use it. And then they throw it away. And then they just, because you're right, they would just go and do what makes the most sense for them. And and if yours is not up to scratch, they'll find something better. So the way I, I mean, my tips around this is what we drew out towards the end there. It's all about those pilot and things like that. It's just good product practices is how I think about it. But if I've done this really, really well, maybe I can answer both questions too. Because so thanks, Panjal. With internal teams, I think version and self-service answered it to an extent. Okay, cool. But if you think about the experience piece, you think about, and we can probably get into the version side, but like if you think about the internal competition side and it being a bad experience, it's probably a bad experience because you haven't, like, I don't mean to be mean because I've been there as well. So it's a reflection on me earlier in my career too. But like, if if people aren't using it and they're moving off it, it's because we've built a bad experience. We built a bad product, right? So like, we need to build a better product. And the way that we build a better product is by spending more time with them, trying to understand what's bad about it and trying to fix those things. And it's hard, I get it. And sometimes you might need to push back on stakeholders and try to fight that fight, because you need to fight the fight to say, like, actually, we're not going to extend this platform. Like, there's no point in extending this platform if people are churning. And that's why I had on the metrics, I talked about how, like, we're measuring, where did I put it? I can't remember where I put it. Anyways, I gave that example of the metrics, and I said, like, for the pilot, we're also measuring, it's up here. I said, we're also measuring things like retention, and we're measuring that because I want to use those metrics. I want to be able to go back to them and say, there is no point in rolling this platform out any further. This is me learning my lessons the hard way. No point in us rolling this platform out any further. There is no point in us building more functionality or extending it, because the people that we've already tried to get using it are already stopping to use it. So like, we need to fix that first. So let's fix that. And if we can't fix that, then maybe this platform is not good and we should just abandon it, right? Or we should do something else, or fire me and hire someone else, right? They can do a better job. So that's how I think about that, and I tackle that. And if anything, because I know about the internal competition, I actually want to use it to my advantage. So when we talked about the pilots and we talked about the launch and we talked about like increasing your TAM and stuff like that, often if you've done a really good job of this, this will hockey stick, because it'll be slow at start because you've got like a lot of pilot teams and you had to get them on board and you had to hold their hand. But there'll be a point of time where you can create enough momentum about it and enough noise about it being really, really good, and look at all the great outcomes that it's had, that you'll have people come in to you, knocking on your door, trying to like, me next. We're still in early stages of the platform at one client, but I wonder if I sold it a little bit too well, which is actually bad. So this isn't me trying to like inflate myself. I actually like thought this was a bad thing. I had some other teams ask if they could be next on the platform, and we're only just going to pilot. So like, I actually don't, like, we're too early. We're like down here. Sorry, we're down here, and they're asking to be involved, which is not good. So it's a good problem to have, but it's actually too early to have that problem. So yeah, that happened the other day. But if you do a really good job of this, it will start to, like, you can use the competition to your advantage, because they'll want to get on board, because, you know, and their leaders will be asking them. The leaders will be like, all those other teams are using that platform. Why aren't we using that platform? You know, and you can use adoption metrics for it too. I actually gave this tip to the platform PM in the product mentorship. I got more than one platform PM in the product mentorship. By the way, I run a product mentorship for anyone wondering. You can go find it on Product Pathways/mentorship. But basically, not here to try and plug the product mentorship. Although if you're interested, work together, do more of this, then go check that out. But I gave this tip to her the other day, which was, actually, you can actually use it to your advantage, and you don't need to do it in a way where you're like being really, I don't know, what's the word, like unethical or really bad, or in an area where you feel uncomfortable. Like, part of it is just to put the data up. So like, if I'm still sharing screen so I can show you. If you did like adoption by department, and like one department's like, you know, really, really like high adoption, and then this one's here, and then this one's high as well. Like you can just put that up. Like you don't need to say anything. You don't need to say anything. The leader of this department will probably start to feel that competition and start to be upset, and then probably go and talk to their team, and you can use that pressure to your advantage to get them to adopt it. She's quite progressed, so she's actually at that point where you want to apply that leverage. And that was the coaching call that we had the other day about it, which was like, she was like, how do I apply this leverage? Because I don't want to just go and talk to their bosses and get their boss to mandate it. Like, what are some of the techniques that we can do here? And this is one of the tactics that I gave her. So yeah, cool. Let me just go back to the versioning self-service. So you meant internal teams. I think versioning self-service answered it to an extent. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so if you're thinking about managing the experience around it, I mean, the versioning stuff is also about, given the window, is also how you manage that by like, I'm not going to force you, but I'm going to give you some window of opportunity to upgrade. I'm also going to sell you on the upgrade that hopefully it's better, and then you'll probably want to upgrade anyways. And hopefully I'm building a better experience and it's kind of getting better. The self-service piece, yeah, I definitely want to work towards that, particularly with a platform in a large company. It's okay at the start. I know I'm kind of like repeating, but I'm just going to cover it if it's helpful. And then you can tell me if you've got follow-up questions around it. But it's helpful to walk them through it, be very manual, even on a B2C point of view. I had a client last year, and they were moving, the European company, they were like moving into the US, and they're breaking into the US. And none of the product managers had done like 0 to 1 before. And they're trying to apply like mature product discovery practices to like 0 to 1. So they're trying to like A/B test their way to it, and they're struggling because they're like, oh, we don't have significance, we don't have enough users, we've only got like a pilot group of like 16 people, et cetera, et cetera. Like this isn't really working. I was like, yeah, it's not working because it's a totally different context. So like, let's talk about how do you approach 0 to 1. And the way you approach 0 to 1, regardless of whether it's internal inside of a company or whether you're launching stuff to the market, is you hold the hand. Those 16 people, it's a B2B company, so they're all like small business owners. You spend time with those small business owners. You go, and they flew some people to the US to really do this. And like you go to their office and you help them, you hold the hand, you walk them through it. Like, and the value there, this is also, there's a concept, I think it was coined by Jeff Patton. Marty Kagan talks about it. So it's a very popular framing that gets thrown around, but I think Jeff tends to have these really nice framings. Is like, there's a difference between shipping to learn versus shipping to earn. So I always think about that. Like, what mode am I in? If I'm in the learning mode, then I'm like, the value here is I'm not trying to get a return on investment. We're going to lose money, but it's fine because I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to see what it's like to get them onboarded. I'm trying to get some traction. I want to be able to leverage that traction to be able to scale and then grow. So the value is something totally different. And then therefore in that mode, yeah, I'm going to hold their hand. I'm going to spend a lot of time. So long story short, same deal with internal platforms. The first couple of teams, I'm going to hold their hand. I'm going to spend a lot of time with them. In fact, it's easier because they're your peers. You can set up a Slack channel with them. Super awesome. By the way, Linear B2B product, but they actually have a Slack community group that's invite only with a bunch of their customers. So you can do Slack groups with other people or community groups. It doesn't need to be an internal thing. I'm just saying it's easier internally. But yeah, so I want to do all of that. I want to kind of bring it through it. And then I want to get to a point, as I do that, I want to start to dial it back because I want to start to path from ship to learn to ship to earn. And if we get to the earn stage, I need to be able to do it at scale. I need to be able to self-serve. So I want to get to a point where the teams are self-serving themselves. If they're coming to me, I'm redirecting them towards, so maybe this helps with the answer too. I'm redirecting them to like documentation. I'm redirecting them to like training that we might be running or things like that. So I want to redirect them towards that and not have to hold their hand all the time. That's important for you to set those boundaries as well, because if you don't, then everyone comes to you, you hold everybody's hand, half your week goes to just helping teams around the organization. It's not a bad thing because you get a lot of goodwill, you build a lot of relationships, but you've got to draw a line or otherwise it's opportunity cost. You're either going to work 60-hour weeks or you are going to lose, you're going to be not doing something else, which is a problem. So hopefully that kind of helps and answers that as well. But yeah, cool. So hopefully I've answered everything. There's no other questions. We can kind of wrap it up here. I knew this would be, my gut told me it would be like at least 2 hours, but yeah, like this could go longer. Like if I turn this into a course, this would be multiple hours. We'd probably do a handful of 90-minute workshops, and we'll probably break down each of these components. But yeah, I appreciate it. Hopefully this was super valuable for you. I tried my best. Like as always, I really want this to be super actionable, give real world examples, give you techniques that you can take. Hopefully this was at least a whole bunch of new mental models and ways to think about it. Hopefully it also included some techniques that you can use. I would highly recommend actually doing that. I think it would be great to put it into practice. I think that's the most important part around all of this. At the very least, hopefully this will give you some, help you at the end of the day. That's my goal. That's, talk about my OKR. My OKR is to be valuable to you, to provide valuable content. Ideally, I don't want it just to be like, oh, this sounds good. I want this to drive a change in behavior for you. I would like you to put some of this into practice and really level you up. And the impact for me, and this is maybe I'm a platform even just because of this. The impact to me is that you then change the behavior that improves your product or your platform in this case, and that has a knock-on effect to your organization and your customers. And there's a little bit of a fingerprint trail on that gets me up in the morning and makes me keep doing this. If you're interested in working together, I do have a product mentorship, as I mentioned before, so you can go check that out over on productpathways.com/mentorship. If you're interested in those courses I mentioned, I've got a strategy one, a stakeholder management one. They are all included in the product mentorship as well. So you can just grab the product mentorship and get access to all of them, and you get access to me, and we can kind of go through all of that. Yeah, hopefully this was useful to you. I appreciate it. It was fun. I like doing these streams. So wherever you are, have a good day, afternoon, evening, morning, and I'll see you at the next one. The next one is going to be on design. We're going to do AI design tools. I've been using things like pencil and paper, the new AI design tools. Obviously, been using Figma's MCP too. So go check that out. If you're watching the recording, I will make sure that I'll get YouTube to I think it's I don't know in which way it goes, but one of the ways I'll get YouTube to throw up basically a link to that so you can go register for that as well. But hopefully I'll see you there. We're going to put those tools head to head. We'll talk about AI design, maybe a little bit about where the profession's going. Are we going to have product designers in the future? Who knows? But we can have a chat about that. Anyways, I'll leave it there. Amazing. Thank you. I'll see you at the next one.